Hello and welcome to Women in GIS to Lightning Talks for December 2026. So happy to have everybody here for our topic of GIS in action. And we have wonderful speakers today and just a full house. So happy holidays, everybody. Happy December. My name is Philippa Burgess, a proud member of Women in GIS for a few years now. I just finished a master's in geospatial intelligence. I have one more year finishing up a law degree in privacy law and cybersecurity, figuring out how I'm working with data. Maybe I should know how to keep it secure. And I just yesterday, so excited, got my GISP E. So on track to be a GISP in the future and really excited for that. And I'm going to turn it over to just thanking our sponsors for Esri, who supports women in GIS, because we aim to be inclusive and supportive. And this event is put on by professional development, and Esri supports all the work that we do and would not be possible without our platinum sponsors and all of our gold and silver sponsors. So many thanks to all of them for all the work they do and their support of our organization and our mission and our values. So with that, let us begin. Our speakers today are Steavi Winston and Olga Tambazidis, and we're going to be speaking route optimization and mapping minds GIS in action at the Department of Mental Health. I'm super excited for these. I'm sure you're all here for the same reason. They're always wonderful presentations. And so we begin. Steavi, I turn it over to you.
Thank you, Philippa. Funny enough, I am actually going to take my GISP on Monday, so pray for me.
Yes, exciting. No, like I said, I'm aspirational in that direction. I was just so pleased to sort of get a first step.
Yes, so
So
lots and lots of
congratulations.
studying, but yes, congrats to you too. Okay, hi. So my name is Steavi Swinson. I am a senior geospatial analyst at Beta Group. We are a civil engineering firm headquartered in Lincoln, Rhode Island. We have a few offices all over New England, in Boston, Hartford, Manchester, New Hampshire, and we primarily focus on asset management. So municipalities hire us to inventory their utility networks like wastewater, stormwater. We also do urban forestry, so taking tree inventory. We do ADA compliance, and we also do what I'm going to talk to you about today is route optimization. So that is using network analysts to optimize routes for snowplows, salting routes, flooding, and leaf pickup and street sweeping, actually. So I'm going to show you a few examples of some projects that we actually completed. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen.
Stop my sharing. There you go.
There we go. Okay. So the first one I'm going to talk to you about is flooding. So before we even begin using network analysts for route optimization, there are a few steps that we go through, which is creating our network. So we always gather road data sets, anything that can impede travel time. So in this case, it's stoplights, stop signs, yield signs, and then also areas of impact. So in this case, it would be flood areas and any points of interest like high school, fire departments, hospitals, things like that. Once we gather all these data sets, we then go into creating a network for the entire city. We run some topology on the network, making sure all the nodes and junctions are connected. And then we run our network analyst to create a shortest path distance of traveling from point A to point B. So this is an example of a project that we did in Yarmouth, Massachusetts, so Cape Cod area. And specifically what the city asked us to look for actually was scenarios in which a fire department could get to a house in need of emergency, or if someone from a house needed to travel to a hospital. So we have our road network here. The green dots are some example houses. And then we have two fire departments and a hospital over here. So once we have our network set up like this, we then took the flood impact areas. So we have flood scenarios at 20% and 5% for year 2030 and 2050. So we ran a few scenarios at each interval. And here's just an example of one of the routes. So we did one for every single green dot that we had, but in this case, this is just getting from the fire department all the way down to a house right on the coast. So without any traffic or just a normal day, this would normally take about 5 minutes. But once we add in the 20, 30, 20% flooding impact areas, which is all in red, those create blockages for the network. So a normal 5 minute travel time now it takes 11 minutes to get from fire department all the way around the flooding to the house. And then if we go on to 20, 35%, this is double the flooding impact. So this actually the route solver actually failed in this case because you could not get from point A to point B without encountering a flood area. So unfortunately, this is a huge thing that we come across on the East Coast, coastal flooding. So this is a report that we then give to the city to say, hey, this is the situation, and here are some potential um, resources that you can use to mitigate this, or, start having people relocate in anticipation of flooding events, things like that. And then this is a very complicated chart. But one thing that we actually do with our network analyst is the first few columns here, these are all the flood scenarios. So, and then these are all the streets that we have on the left-hand side. So all of this is travel time. All of this is change in travel time or even impassable routes. And what we actually did is we took the names of every single street that is considered impassable so that we could give it to the DPW workers to then, improve road maintenance, try to build better structures around those areas, maybe some bridges, things like that. And then this is just an extension of that. We took count of how many roads were actually used in every scenario. So this kind of gave us a hotspot analysis, if you will, of how many times a road was used in this instance. So we knew which ones were the more common, more popular roads, which in this case turned into priority roads of which ones needed to be taken care of first. So that is an example of our flooding. Next, I'm going to move on to one of our snowplow routes, actually. Um, so we had another town actually hire us to do their snowplow routes. So this is just an example of one of the routes that they gave us. So as you know, snowplow routes, it travels both north and southbound on roads. So what we do is we take this and we input it into Network Analyst, but with different parameters. So in this case, traffic lights, or just traffic in general, that doesn't really impede snowplow routes. For the most part, there's not a huge time impediments on these travel routes because people aren't normally traveling on the streets in events of snowstorms. But the good thing is that there were no route blockages for this scenario that we ran. So this is an example of one route. When we get all of the routes from a city, we do something called route balancing. So what this means is that a city will have, in this case, I believe it's about 20 routes. They have a lot of A, Bs, and C routes. So it's about 20 routes for the whole city. And they have multiple snow plows that go out to tackle the entire city in one day, for example. So we do route balancing so that each truck only has to travel about 5 miles. So that could take everyone like 4 hours, for example. So that way everyone is traveling, doing the same amount of work and getting back to the office at the same exact time. So no one person is working more than the other. So we divide up the city into all of these routes so everything is equal. And we even have charts down here where we calculate the exact mileage for each route. So the top chart here is actually some of the miles per route and then some of the lane miles. And what that means is adding both the north and southbound, so accounting for plowing on both sides of the street. And then once we get all of our route balancing done, it turns into and turns into an entire city of coverage, essentially. And we then provide the city with turn by turn directions. So something that's pretty neat with Network Analyst is it does sequencing. And what that means is that once you input all of your routes and you run the analyst tool, it actually gives you numbered streets. So it'll tell you, plow this street first, then take a left turn and plow this one next, take a right, another left, or rough. So it actually optimizes the route and the most efficient way of completing, say, 20 streets, for example, and not having to treat every single one like a dead end. It will actually traverse the entire city. So you're doing everything in an efficient manner, and then you're able to get back to the office as well. So it plans out all of that for us. And then we also do all of this with, oops, excuse me. We also do the same exact thing for sanding routes as well. A lot of cities do both snowplow and sanding, but their routes actually look completely different for both of them. So I'll give you kind of a side by side example here, but oop. So this is one city's snow routes, and then we also have their sanding routes. So you can see same exact city, but the routes are completely different. And that's because one will take more time than the other, or it depends on the city's workers of how many people they'll hire to do each task. So yeah, that is pretty much all I have for you guys on our route optimization. It's actually a lot more fun than it sounds. But I enjoy it very much. And it's kind of interesting to see how you can take this and kind of apply it to multiple scenarios because we have done this before for leaf litter pickup during the fall season. And we have also done this for sending out street sweeping trucks. So it's pretty interesting, I think. But I will hand it back to you, Felipa.
Fantastic. Well, we've got starting to get questions. And well, let me start where you're getting lots of applause. So let's start with that. Very happy to see all of the applause. Thank you so much for the claps and the hearts and just the celebration of like thank you for that. And then so I'm just going to go to the chat first. Comment, very cool. Every city should deploy something like that. So
Yes, they
and then we've got a question
should.
from Shannon. So I'm going to go ahead and unmute her and
Mhm.
Yes,
um,
I had a question about the flooding one where it showed the 2030 and with the 5% and the 20%.
Yes.
I might be misunderstanding those maps because it looked like it said that the 20%, it was 11 minutes, but the 5%, which wouldn't that mean less flooding, 5%? It said it completely broke the route server. So I'm not sure if I'm understanding what the 5 and the 20% are. Is that the amount flooded?
Yes, it is. Go back here.
actually, Stevie, can
Yes.
you kindly just reshare one of your slides so we all have something beautiful to look at while we chat for a second?
Um, Again, I think I'm on the wrong one.
And other comments that are coming in, I'll read them. Super cool. I love it. Approximately how long? Oh, so this leads to a question. So we'll get to that, which is
Ooh.
wanting to know how long it takes. and looks amazing. And then there's a question attached to that. So I'll get to those.
Okay, I think this is the one you're referring to, correct?
You had it a second ago. Now we see
Yeah, we're just seeing your file drive right now.
file.
There.
There you are.
There
Yay.
you go.
Nothing to
Yeah,
like rest
so
our eyes on. That's just pretty well.
that's it. Yeah.
Thank you.
So the middle one said 20% with a total time of 11 minutes. But then the next one says 5%, which is this the amount flooding? Because it visually looks like more flooding. So I don't know what the 5 and 20% mean.
Going to be completely honest with you, they are just mislabeled.
Okay. I was thinking it might be the case, but I was thinking it might be that I just wasn't understanding it. So, okay.
Yes, that is on me.
All right, great. Good. Thank you.
No problem.
Excellent. So we have some questions in the chat, but also I was going to say, if you dropped a question in the chat, great. I will read some of them, but if you also want to, if you have a different question or you want to ask the question you put in your chat, feel free to raise your hand and we can talk as well. So I'll just go ahead and give you everybody that option. But I'll go ahead and sorry, we've got more people joining, which is fantastic. And then okay, so let me just read one from the chat. So super cool. I love it. Approximately how long does it take to do one of those projects?
So I guess that depends on the amount of routes in a city. So it actually is a pretty lengthy process, and that's because you have to build your network first. And not all cities are providing the greatest of centerline files. So there's a lot of cleaning up in that process. And then we actually have to do some calculations behind the scenes. So when you're using Network Analyst, you need a time aspect. So we actually have to do some calculations between the miles per hour that a truck would be driving and the time that they would take to do a route. So hypothetically, we say 8 hours for like an 8-hour workday. And there has to be some calculations of about typical travel time. So once that's imported into the system, then we start doing the routes. So I'll say, for example, when we were doing the snowplow routes, this actually was about 25 routes for the city. So basically, we had to run the network analyst tool 25 times. So that was actually probably a week-long process in itself just to do the snowplow routes. And then if you put like sanding on top of that, because typically cities want both of those, it's another few days. So it's actually pretty lengthy.
Wow. Okay. Great answer. Okay, next question. Looks amazing. Did you need to account for the road underpasses or bridges? And if so, did you use elevation or change the connectivity of lines at these locations?
That is a good question, actually. So yes and no, because what happens is we will take a city centerline file, but cities actually ask us to exclude specific roads. So the number one that we always exclude is private roads. And sometimes they actually ask us to exclude main roads that would have bridges or underpasses because they kind of, well, one, they outsource those to a different company, or two, they're actually state owned, so not like owned by the city. So the city only takes care of like the local residents versus like main roads that are sometimes in business districts. So that's honestly dependent on the city and where town roads are owned.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, next one's a compliment, and then we'll get to the next question. So this one's from Colby. Thank you, Stevie. I live in the area, and it's cool to see the snowplow routes for it. I'm always impressed with how efficient they are. So compliment to you and to the
Thank you.
city. And then next is a question. Are you using Street Map Premium or did you build your own network files?
So we actually build our own network files, but it's not as convoluted as it sounds. It's honestly just taking a street centerline file, doing some cleanup tools on it, like repairing geometry or using the integrate tool, correcting like self intersections, things like that. And then you're able, after you can run your own topology on it and build a network from there. So yeah, we do all of our own.
Okay, great. And the next one's a statement, but and actually this one's directed back to Shannon. So from Courtney saying, appreciate that you asked that, Shannon. I was wondering the same thing. Math isn't my strong suit. Although I'm always a big champion for like, let us not be math afraid. Because
Math in public is not my friend either.
uh, I grew up with a dad who's an accountant and an engineer, so I got really strong math, but I always felt like as a woman, I was always like tracked into the arts. And it like I made a hard turn into like tech and science to own my math, which is why I think these communities are so important. So anyways, but great to see like that question answered. And getting on to our next question. Do you find that you can regularly follow the optimized routes out in the field, meaning across seasons when field crews are using these optimization routes to plow snow streets or harvest leaf bags, that the route data itself is reliable and that the crews don't have to frequently change course for unknown reasons, which aren't included in the input data for the GIS analysis?
For the most part, yes, they can follow them. We throw it onto a tablet or an iPad for them to actually. So what happens is once we give this back to the city, they then assign each route to a worker. So it's on their tablet, they have it, or believe it or not, some municipalities still have paper maps. So they'll print out each section for each person. Um, the good thing is, you can update in real time. So sometimes when we deploy these out, we'll just deploy it out in a web map after the fact so that they can, download an experience builder or something, just the app, and they take it and run with it. So if there are things that we need to update, we can just input that into Network Analyst and it'll update it for them. Or if there are any like road detours, things like that. For the most part, we haven't had to do that yet. So if that ever happens, I will update this PowerPoint for the next talk.
Hi, everybody.
Excellent. All right. Well, this is wonderful. Thank you so much. Obviously, stick around and we'll wrap this up. I'm going to turn our attention to our next guest, which we have a prepared video for, but I think it's the same Olga. Is Olga in the audience and wanted to come and say hello? And so then we can pepper you with questions when we're done. If I did see an Olga in our meeting, I'm just
Yeah, hi. I don't know if you guys
hello.
can hear me.
Yes, yes, yes. So happy to see you.
Yeah, I wasn't sure if I could make it, but I'm happy to answer any questions at the end.
Excellent. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and play the video, and we're excited to see it. Um, okay, so hopefully you can all see the screen, and that I will. Um, let me see my video. Okay, so that's your video. Okay, I'm on full screen. Okay, we're good. I'm going to go ahead and play.
My name is Olga Tambazidis. A little introduction of myself is that I'm a demographic research and planning analyst with Los Angeles Unified School District. My last role was with the Department of Mental Health for Los Angeles County, and I was the GIS Tech 2, and that's kind of where this presentation stemmed from. So during my time at the Department of Mental Health, I was often asked how GIS fits into this field. I believe it's a super fair question, as before my time in this role, I was not aware of the relationship between GIS and mental health. In summary, when individuals enter the Los Angeles County mental health system, whether it's through walk-ins, referrals, outreach programs, jail releases, or any other avenue, we use that data
Getting a lot of comments that there's no audio. You're not hearing audio. So that is a sharing issue. You're not hearing the audio. Okay.
I
Okay.
think that
Felipe, I
you
think
had
it,
went.
I think you went
Sorry,
on
yeah.
mute for a minute. And so then therefore we couldn't hear it because I think it's coming out of your speakers. So if you try
That,
if
I
you
was
try
just trying to be quiet and respectful.
totally. So I
Could you
think that,
also
yeah,
turn yours up? It's just really quiet for me.
I think that
I,
sharing the computer audio will fix that. So if she shares the computer audio, then you should be able to not have that issue.
right, I'm putting my volume at the highest volume it goes, and I'm actually going to just look at the video file for a second and just make sure that that is at the highest it goes as well. Looks like it is. Okay. Did you, so where, let's just respectfully go back. Okay, let's see it. Are you hearing this?
Hi, everybody. My name is Olga Tambazidis. A little introduction of myself is that I'm a demographic research and planning analyst with Los Angeles Unified School District. My last role was with the Department of Mental Health for Los Angeles County, and I was the GIS Tech 2, and that's kind of where this presentation stemmed from. So during my time at the Department of Mental Health, I was often asked how GIS fits into this field. I believe it's a super fair question, as before my time in this role, I was not aware of the relationship between GIS and mental health. In summary, when individuals enter the Los Angeles County mental health system, whether it's through walk-ins, referrals, outreach programs, jail releases, or any other avenue, we use that data alongside the services we provide and continually assess how we can best meet the community's needs. So I'm going to walk us through a story map that I prepared for GIS Day 2024 and presented it at GIS Pro 2025 that showcases some examples of my previous work. So first thing we're going to take a look at is this administrative boundary map that we mainly focus on in Los Angeles County Department of Mental Health. The county encompasses 88 municipalities, 8 service planning areas, and 5 supervisorial districts. Together, these organizational structures support the complex fabric of Los Angeles County. Next, we're going to take a look at this demographic snapshot dashboard. This is an introduction on how census information can be translated into a visual element. This app is a little bit busier than how I would typically build a dashboard, but it can still be easily used to discover the age range, the population, and the median household income, a few metrics that we consider often at DMH. I've already used this one specific dashboard many times to share with my non-GIS peers examples of how we can use GIS to transform data into a visual medium that we can manipulate and analyze. So the data for this map was pulled from the Los Angeles County authoritative layers referencing the 2023 census. So next, the past 2 maps we created were created using publicly available data. But moving forward, we're going to focus on client-specific data. This series of maps analyzes the relationship between the languages spoken by the clinician staff and the primary languages spoken by the DMH clients, specifically during July 2024. I created these series because I've done versions of this analysis for specific locations and languages, and I just wanted to see what that next step of the analysis could look like. So the maps are a language-specific heat map highlighting the location of our speakers and displaying clinic locations for employees speak that same language. Additionally, I've included a staff to client ratio for each language. So as the map continually scrolls through, I will highlight some observations. So our Cambodian language is on the lower end of our coverage, but we do have clinics that are right in the concentration of speakers, which is in Long Beach. Spanish is a very well-covered language. We have 2 Spanish-speaking clinicians for every 1 Spanish-speaking client. And Hmong is kind of an interesting case. It appears at the time of the data download, we did not have any Hmong-speaking employees. This might be for a couple of factors. 1, it could be true. 2, it could be that the database was just not updated to reflect current Hmong-speaking employees. And 3, another possible explanation is that our database at that time had a column that was named other languages that would capture any language that's outside of the specific language columns. And so if it was included in the other language, it would have been excluded from my analysis. The current database schema has changed how languages are captured. So it could be an improvement in understanding the languages that our clinicians speak, but it does highlight the challenge in working with our data and the difficulty of doing longer term temporal reviews. So yeah, at the end of the scroll, there's a quick chart with the reviews and the ratios. And when language and accessibility questions arise in the future, a version of this analysis can be created to find a solution. So on to our final series of maps. These are based on an actual project I worked on with the Health Access and Integration Unit team. DMH uses GIS to assess the impact of new California legislation, such as the Behavioral Health Continuum Infrastructure Program, the BHCIP, and Prop 1 from 2021. These programs allocated money statewide towards construction, acquisition, and expansion of properties for the infrastructure of behavioral health. As a part of this effort, DMH was tasked with writing letters of support for interested candidates. To make informed decisions, we needed to consider various data points, including past awardees, locations of interest, county campuses, providers by level of care. So I created these maps to help determine which applicants to support by providing a visual analysis of key factors, such as the location of existing beds, planned future beds, and whether the current coverage is equitably distributed across the population. So these maps offered a comprehensive view of where funding is currently allocated and where additional resources could best be utilized, especially when compared to the population data. This project is a real-world example of how GIS plays a vital role in supporting decision-making in the mental health field. So finally, I just wanted to highlight some challenges that I encountered in my work at that time. While we rely on authoritative data, much of our client data is manually entered. So this leads inherently to missing information, typographical errors, and data inconsistencies. For example, clients experiencing homelessness may be recorded in various ways in their address column. It could say homeless, it could say unhoused, it could have the letter H, or even just the intersection that they're staying at. So when I was extracting the data, I needed to account for all of these variations to ensure accuracy and completeness. Another challenge, similar to what I mentioned earlier, is that the data requirements consistently evolve. For example, we recently started collecting the sexual orientation and gender identity data. It introduced new columns and variables that were not previously tracked. So since this data was so new, its inclusion in the analysis could lead to misleading reflections. For instance, based on the SOGI data, it appears that less than 2% of our client population identified as something other than heterosexual. In reality, 92% of our clients had no data entered in these fields, which could falsely suggest that the default is heterosexual. As time and data improves, this information will become more accurate and useful. So in closing, GIS at Los Angeles County Department of Mental Health is more than just maps. It's a tool that helps us understand communities, identify gaps in care, and make data-driven decisions. While challenges in the data quality and evolving requirements remain, the work we do demonstrates how GIS can directly support planning, policy, and ultimately the well-being of residents across Los Angeles County. So thank you, Women in GIS, for your time and for the invitation to present today. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn.
Okay, thank you so much, Olga. That was fantastic. And I'm going to say we probably have some questions. Sorry about the audio on that, but let me celebrate again all of the cheers you're getting and the hearts, and celebrating another wonderful presentation. So thank you for that. So similarly, if you have questions, drop in the chat or go ahead and raise your hand. Happy to take your questions in however you want to. And so I've got a first comment here, great presentation, love seeing the applications of GIS in social sciences, and that one's got a couple 100%. So we agree with that. And really, and I actually was really appreciating what you were saying just about that data changing and just being newer and then not being as accurate. I think that's kind of an interesting, just the data science part of what we do. I thought was quite interesting. So I guess that's my question is it's not really well formed, but I'm just interested in just like, how you are, how do you deal with those challenges?
Yeah, it was a very common topic in our work because we had like our internal data that would, we knew exactly how many people lived here or exactly, how many clinicians are at this clinic. But because we are spread across all of LA County, a lot of our client data was input by the clinicians out in the field. So we had tons of variance in data. That was something that it would have to be part of the conversation when people would ask us for a delivery. They wanted to know X amount of people in this area with this, ethnicity or language capability or, housed or unhoused. And we would always have to start the conversation with saying that the data that we have is a little faulty, not faulty as in incorrect, but, it's very it's not cleaned up, it's living, it's constantly evolving. So it just had to be part of the understanding and the conversation when people asked us for any kind of analysis. But yeah, it's a continual project, I think, that's probably throughout healthcare, that we all deal with.
No, an important one. I think and I'm just curious if other people have this sort of experience or identity. I mean, we identify as GIS, but in reality, we are also data analysts and we're also data scientists. And then a lot of people we know in data analysis and data science don't have the geospatial component to what they do. But in reality, we kind of live across all three.
Yeah, exactly. When I first started at that role, when we were seeing the kind of data that was coming in, I was like, why doesn't it have like drop downs or autocompletes, or how come like it's all just manually input? And I just learned through being in the system, like that would be a very tall order to start, the whole system all over and try to implement a new database for, the thousands of clinics that we have. So yeah, exactly what you were saying.
Yeah. We've got some more questions. So let me turn back to the chat to say, do you have any idea how residents or agencies are using the dashboard? And then someone said their question was sort of similar about how is the dashboard received? So how's it being
Oh,
used? How's it being received?
yeah, that's interesting. When I presented this live, I also got that question. This actually isn't being used by anybody. It was an example of the work that I've done, so that I can't share, right? Because it has private information. So I kind of replicated that work with different uh, inputs so that I could share it in a presentation. So it's not actively being used. It's just an example.
Yeah, but a beautiful one. And I think
Thank you.
you bring up a lot of the challenges of doing this type of work, especially when there are, like you said, that other column.
Yeah.
Someone is Courtney is saying, wish that this was the standard for all counties and populations in the USA and elsewhere. Yeah, I think I second that. And I'll let you comment on that as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It was I at GIS Pro when I mentioned this, a couple other people who have been in healthcare reached out to me and they asked like, "Oh, how do you network with other GIS people in the mental health field?" And to my knowledge, I don't know of any other, people that had that GIS title in the mental health department. I think that was pretty unique, and I definitely agree that it should be expanded. I feel like every county would benefit from something like that, and that role being in their house.
Absolutely. I would recommend you connect with my professor, Dr. Catherine Lester, who came to us at USC and USC Spatial Sciences with a background in mental health and data uh, analysis and GIS. So there is one person out there.
Yeah, no, I'm sure.
I mean, there are many, obviously, but I would
Yes.
say that was specifically her field, where she got her PhD in. Someone's going to say, I've never heard of GIS and mental health connecting together, but it should. So
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
yeah, thank you, Courtney, on that. Yeah. But yeah, there's so much that can be learned. And that this is a great time, by the way. Let's as Olga had ended her presentation saying connect with me on LinkedIn. Let us start there. Olga, can you lead us off by dropping your LinkedIn in the chat and
Oh,
an
yeah.
invitation for everybody else to do the same so we can all get connected. We have a bit more time in our meeting, so we'd love to just kind of say hello to the people, our members here and our guests who've come today. And if you guys have some other comments to put in the chat, we'll read them out. If you want to raise your hand for anything, feel free. I mean, obviously, seeing it's great. Everybody's kind of dropping in their LinkedIn, so please do connect with each other, follow each other. It's always great to sort of expand our networks and celebrate each other and help each other, sort of overcome the challenges as we have them. Uh, okay, so Stevie's got her LinkedIn in there. Great. Um, Madison is saying, I'm not working in healthcare at the moment, but that is my educational background. I love to see a GIS becoming used within the healthcare space. Might have to return to it one day. Courtney's got her LinkedIn in there. Great. Olga, you got Jessica, Aiden, Emma, Esther. Esther saying, thanks for the presentation. Great stuff. Chris has her LinkedIn, Adrian, Maui, Madison. So yeah, just take a moment and uh, sometimes it doesn't let me copy and paste when I try to do that. Sometimes you have to kind of open them all up at once. I'm gonna see if it lets me, like what it lets me do. And, thank you for being, oh good. Okay, so I was able to just copy and paste that. So that might be a time-saving measure. And then Jory is saying, I do GIS at the local health department, and we are increasingly trying to work with our mental health department on projects and data analysis. Okay, another question for Olga. How did you get buy-in from the department to show what GIS could do?
Yeah, I think it was a unique opportunity because they had that GIS role. So I was I interviewed to enter the GIS tech role with the Department of Mental Health. So it wasn't that I had to convince them. They had a GIS person previously that moved on and they were excited to continue that role in their department. So I was a little lucky.
Right. So that, and what do you, if it's okay to ask, what are you doing now? Like
Yeah, I am a demographic research and planning analyst with Los Angeles Unified School District. So leaning more on the demographic research and the geography to make sure our resources and our students are connecting for LAUSD, Los Angeles Unified School District. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. That's
Hmm.
great. So a nice evolution from sort of where you were and kind of moving that forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
I love that. Okay, Emily is saying, hi there. I am actually looking for new opportunities in GIS. This is not related to the presentations. Are there any projects you have to show employers? And what are your most proudest personal projects? I just got a year personal basic license with Esri to create projects with publicly available data to show employers. And Emily's added her LinkedIn. So let's be supportive there. Maybe this is a question Olga and Steavi might have some sort of career advice for Emily and anybody else who's kind of growing in their careers, specifically related to portfolios. And actually, I'm going to add one more thing. If we can kind of make this a double question, because I know Steavi said she's taking her JISP tomorrow. So everybody, let's give like a celebration and like some good energy and good love to Steavi for a successful exam tomorrow. And Steavi, maybe you can also say it's not just early professionals getting for employers, but you need a good portfolio for JISP as well. So let both of you kind of answer that question. I'll start with Olga and then we'll go over to Steavi.
Sounds good. Yeah. Well, I mean, good luck on the test tomorrow and for everybody else who's taking it at the same time. Emily, this is well, first of all, the fact that you are attending these meetings and connecting with networks is an amazing first step because as you continually see familiar faces, you are starting to build the people that you can reach out to and that you can ask one-on-one questions. That's pretty much how I started as well. So this is a great step, Emily. Let's see, do you have any projects that you show your employers? What are your most proud personal projects? Man, I think oh, I'm gonna be upset with myself for not remembering his name, but everybody knows this guy. He's famous on LinkedIn and he always has these amazing cartography projects that you can follow along with. You guys know what I'm talking about. The guy from Esri. Yeah,
John
John Nelson.
Nelson.
Of course, the celebrity. Anytime I follow along his projects, I think I come up with some beautiful creation that could never have been done before. So those are always great to do. Yeah, and then just the work projects. Whenever I'm working on something, I take at the end of the year time to reflect on on the work that I've done, especially if it's something that I think could be cool. And then I customize it a little bit more, improve it, and then add it to my portfolio. So just it's like a rolling basis of always keeping track of your work. And if you think it's great, don't be afraid to show it off. So yeah, that's what I got.
Excellent. Steavi?
This is gonna sound so nerdy, but something I actually do, completely not work related, is I'm a big hiker, and I actually have my very own Garmin InReach. So I actually use it to kind of map out hiking trails I do in the White Mountains in New Hampshire, or even just using my All Trails hiking app. I actually export some GPX files out of it and kind of create journeys of all the places personally that I've hiked. And I actually also did a passion project a few years ago while I was in college. The University of Maryland actually has like a whole entire database of like crime analysis or like terrorism incidents that happen around the entire world. And I once did like a trends and patterns analysis of that. Just passion projects that I like to do. They don't actually go anywhere, but I'm sure they could go in a portfolio.
Fantastic. And obviously you built that portfolio as part of GISP. So again, I
Yeah.
think throughout our careers, we need our portfolios. And to that, I would say just coordinate and saying my advice as I'm working with college and mentees is don't just learn static maps, but also create app tools, learn how to work with data to show case info for individual like stakeholders. So yeah, there's plenty of opportunities to make things dynamic and interactive and lots of different ways to present. And then Emily saying thank you. And yes, excellent presentations. And one thing I would add, we just wrapped November. So it's a great opportunity to go check out those 30-day map challenges and just be inspired by what other people have done. And some people will put out tutorials for how they made particular maps or what data sets they used. So I always love 30-day map challenge that happens in November. Is, just follow that hashtag and you'll see many things that kind of can inspire you for what other people in the community are doing. Because we just had GIS Day, so that's always exciting. So did actually one more question, and as we wrap it up, anybody do anything super fun for GIS Day that we want to talk about or celebrate?
I want to highlight the Vanguard Cabinet does quarterly MAPI Q&As, and there's always one during GIS week. So if you guys are looking for more connections or have any questions in the geospatial field, keep an eye out for GPN's Vanguard Cabinet events.
Excellent, and that's GPN. And then Jennifer.
So I took GIS Day as the opportunity to kind of advertise our geospatial roadmap to the entire county. So I had IT send out an email directing people to a geospatial portal that I created, and let them know specific resources and things like that. So, and then I created 2 email lists through a service I didn't know that I had with the county, and having people subscribe to that. And I had already started like the external users email list. So I sent them a Happy GIS Day email. And then on the email I sent to using the county email system, I said, if you want to subscribe to emails to find out more about what we're doing with GIS, please sign up here. So that was fun. I got like 16 people out of 1,200, but 16 more than I had.
No, it's wonderful. I mean,
Yeah.
marketing is part of it and communicating, and we are communicators with maps, and but sometimes we have to communicate about what we do, and I
Yeah.
love that's great. And we got a couple others. Jessica saying I did the MSF Doctors Without Borders Mapathon, part of the Missing Map project, and she put a link in the chat to that project. So check that out. And then Emily saying I live in Southern California because I'm currently employable. I drove up to Stanford to the David Ramsey map collection and met with David Ramsey and Alan Carroll. It was awesome, fantastic. And Katie saying I went to GIS geography trivia event hosted by the local GPN chapter here in Idaho. Fantastic. And Katie, I just have to compliment you because I see you active in the Facebook group and being like very generous with your advice to other people saying, hey, I'm here and I need some help. So I do like want to remind everybody, Women in GIS, obviously check out the portal, check out the website. It's probably a really good time for me to put out back my closing slide. But yeah, we do have the wonderful like Facebook groups, and it's so good to see people sharing advice and support with each other and getting their questions answered. So just a reminder that, you know, that is there for everybody to benefit from. And all right, so thank you. And you can view our series recordings on the YouTube channel at Women in GIS. The next event will be in February, Fridays at 12 p.m., 3 p.m. Eastern, and just more information will be up for the topic and the date as we come into the new year. So with that, I'm going to come back to the chat.